All right. So Andy and I are going to go through a few things today, which let's call it a little bit risky given the internet. And we're going to show off a whole bunch of agentic tools working with our suite of products. And it's going to be a little bit of, we're going to talk through what we're going to do. The first thing I'm going to do, and Andy, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Hooper. I'm the head of product at Fabric Data. Very pleased to be here. For anyone who's not yet watching this session, this is the highest risk session that has yet taken place on the stage. So don't miss out.
All right, great. So I'm going to kick things off. The first thing I'm going to do is just ask a relatively complicated question. And you're going to understand why I'm asking this later on after we talk through our products. So I'm looking to do some research around titles to acquire. I'm looking for 2 top movies that I don't have in studio. It's a key part here. Please go do some research to determine what movies would be good candidates for Crave, a streaming platform in Western Canada, specifically tailored towards a Western Canadian audience. I don't want you to find titles that are exclusive to other platforms. Netflix originals, good example. Ones that are popular in similar markets and aren't on competitive platforms in Canada. I'm just going to start there. You'll understand why I did that in a second, and I'll go back to our slideshow. So where we're going to start, we're talking about agents in action. And what this means is how do we as software companies, software publishers, enable agentic workflows in the tools that are going to be used in the enterprise without building or in companion building those tools within our products ourselves. So the challenge overall is that media operations teams manage content across multiple enterprise systems. And a lot of times the workflow is, great, create this thing in here, or one team creates it in this product, and then they got to take the output from that system, go put it in another product, and maybe do research in a third product, and then your operations teams have to ingest a media order. And how does this thing come together? Ordering, tracking, managing media assets requires all of this knowledge to come together in one place. So what do we do, Andy?
Well, thank you for asking. So, what we can actually start to imagine here is that connecting all of those systems and those teams into a cohesive workflow has for a long time been the purview of, let's say, systems integration and quite complex business transformation. And that's not going away, but there is an increasing number of capabilities that we have thanks to AI, and in particular agentic-based AI, and exposing our systems correctly, which can start to fill in some of the gaps for us and start to accelerate our ability to link some of these systems together. So we have actually enabled that natural language access to our systems via MCP, Model Context Protocol. You'll hear a lot about that at the show, I'm sure, in various places. But it's a standard way of exposing our system capabilities to agentic workers. Okay, so agentic workers such as Claude Code, as we're doing in the demo here, but it could be any agentic worker that you set up within your business. One of the things that I think is really key to understand here is that the MCP is just one way you can expose that capability. So you could also be a command line interface. It could be the raw API. But what MCP gives you is a more contextualized set of information for the agentic worker to help it do the job well in the first place. And so that's what we're going to be illustrating today.
Great. So if we look at our portfolio, we have 2 products in the market. We have Fabric Origin, which has our Nexus, which is our overall data store, contextual canonical title store. We've got Origin Studio, which is a title master for your enterprise. And we've got Origin Insights, which, if we go back to my first question that I input, Origin Insights has information on every single streaming service in the world, over 600 platforms, 1.5 billion pieces of information that can help inform decisions. And on the Xytech side?
Yeah, so Xytech is a name that may be familiar to many of you. It's a system that has existed for a good number of years now. It's driving the media operations within many media companies today for production scheduling, for media orders, and also for transmission scheduling as well. And we've been doing a lot of work at Fabric now that Xytech is part of the product family here under the Fabric banner to modernize the infrastructure, to port it onto AWS, which an increasing number of our deployments now are on, to modernize the platform so that it supports a much more cloud-friendly way of operation and delivering brand new user interfaces and AI capabilities on top of the Xytech platform.
I think the key thing to look at is this big blue box at the top. which is all of our products now have support for MCP, so natural language asks, in any tool that you bring to the table, as well as inside of our products. So what that means for an enterprise is you're no longer dependent on the software publisher to create the AI tool that's in your app. You can actually use one cohesive platform across the top to talk to all of the pieces within it, which is just kind of a big deal. So how did we make this possible, or how did we do this? About a year and a half ago, we started off with AWS, really rethinking the infrastructure components of those software products, migrating them to AWS modern infrastructure. So taking some old, say, legacy deployment methods and using managed services, API gateways, building up the foundational building blocks, and then finally building this MCP layer on top to allow AI tools to understand what the API endpoints are for common services. And where we are as a company is we've released, let's call it version 1 of those, that has about 150 tools, specific tools that wrap up our API endpoints and allow those systems to get data back. So if we go back to my query, what I was asking for is like, I don't know, go find content that's trending that might be good for an audience. That's looking actually at the Origin Insights products. It's looking at all that data to come up with good recommendations. And then from there, we're going to do a couple other steps. Andy?
So what you see on the slide now is exactly the demo that we're going to be doing here that Rob has already kicked off. And just starting up at the top left there, the market research is the first step. So Rob already kicked off that query. It's quite involved. It takes a few minutes, but it would take people hours, right? So looking through the data sets, understanding some of the trending information that Rob was asking about and coming back with recommendations. And he was using the Claude Code or Cowork? Claude Cowork, excuse me. You can also use Claude Code if you want. And he was using Cowork connected to our MCP server to ask that question. So when we flip back over to that, you should see that it's come back with an answer. The next step that we'll do is we'll go to another of our products and we'll ask Claude to interface via the MCP into our Origin Studio product. And for some of the titles that is recommended, we will go and import those into our private title catalog. Origin Studio is the system that manages your private canonical data set for the titles that you manage in your business. Okay. We have a lot of data governance capabilities in there, a lot of data security capabilities, a lot of data enrichment capabilities, but we will bootstrap those records using data from Origin Nexus, which is where we actually create metadata for sale that you can actually use within your business as well. And then finally, we'll go to our Xytech system. Having got to the point where we've decided what we want to stream and what we want to place on service, we will go and create media orders within the Xytech platform to ingest the physical assets from the sources, transform them ready for distribution onto the streaming platforms. And there's the risk, because we don't know if the internet's going to go down in the middle of the demo. Let's find out.
Or the AI will behave. It's going to be great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about market research.
Yeah, so the market research part of this is leveraging Origin Insights. The kind of things that we do with Origin Insights to contextualize this specific product, we actually have teams of people who on a semi-automated and automated basis are looking at every single streaming platform in the world, at least the ones we can physically get access to, and we are understanding on by default a weekly, but as much as a daily basis, which titles are placed on which platforms, what price they're being offered at, which packages they're being sold under. And we're making all of that data available into our Origin Insights dashboard and now also via our MCP layer and into our other products. Why would you use this? Well, we've been asked lots of questions by companies here this week who are working in the media supply chain, and a very common problem is to understand whether once you've distributed a title and placed it out there, did it actually reach where it was supposed to go? Is it now on service? Is the metadata, is the imagery, are the cast and crew information that are being presented for your content in a particular streaming platform correct? And with the Origin Insights platform, we can provide that full loop of information back so that from your main catalog, you can actually understand that. And on a daily basis, be assured that your deliveries have actually reached where they're supposed to go and are actually in market.
So how would we have, how would a user have gone and found this information without the use of AI? Well, we have these wonderful dashboards that show all of this information, and you can dig through them and you can find the answers and you can download things and you can cross-reference. You can look at genre overlaps. You can filter by your own countries, right? But that seems like a lot of work when I can just connect Claude Cowork to this, put in my question that I did at the beginning. It is now on the right side of the screen connected to Origin Insight. I'm looking at all the tools, kicked off the research, great data that's come in. Your studio catalog has 12 movies. It's now connected to my studio catalog to figure out what's in there already, because I don't want a candidate title that already exists. So it's eliminated those. It's recommended that I either implement Marty Supreme, gives me a reasoning why, or Shelter, the 2026 action movie. It's giving me the demand score. So one of the things that Origin Insights does is it looks like trending information across the territory and comes up with a hits or a demand score. So either of these, I can actually I can now decide. So I'll go back to my slides in a second before we continue on with this.
Great, thanks. So the next step that we're going to go through now is we've decided on a title from our research that we want to actually place within our catalog. So we're now going to go ahead and kick off the next phase of this. With Origin Studio, you have the ability to manage, as I mentioned, the titles and the metadata that are canonical to your business and place the governance around that enables you to keep control of it and ensure that the right people and agents touch that data at only the right moments. We support features such as definition of done. So definition of done means my data is complete for some purposes, but not for others. This is a classic problem in managing metadata within media businesses, is that you can have multiple definitions of done depending on what you want to do with the data. So this is where we're now going to manage that. And what Rob will do is he will prompt the Claude agent to actually use the data in Nexus to get that title into Studio.
Now I have to type live in a demo, which is almost impossible because you forget how to type. That's great. Let's add Marty Supreme. And allow you to that. Add.
It deals with spelling mistakes pretty well, actually.
Medium and long synopsis info.
So what Rob's prompting here is a second aspect as well, which is that quite often you may want to then modify the metadata in order to present it differently for your own streaming service. And so what we just asked Claude to do there was not just to put the record into Origin Studio, but on the way through to also actually take a look at what we're getting from Nexus and come up with some new suggestions for new synopses that we can review. Okay, so this is another example of the kind of agentic workflow you can do.
So I could have done all of that through this UI again, right? The key here is all the things I'm doing in the AI agent are things that you can click through in the screens. But why would you click through it in the screens if I could just tell it what to do? And we're kind of going into a paradigm of software usage where we want to enable that kind of experience while maintain that you can still do it in the studio library. So we can just look at where our Claude agent's at. I told it what to do, which is add Marty Supreme and also make some French synopses. It's now gone, pulled out all the stuff that it needs, and it's going to think through and do it and add it to our catalog.
So let's just take a quick look at some of the elements in Studio whilst we're waiting for Claude to do its thing over there. So here you're looking at the Studio title library. So this is everything you've already imported that's already in your list. If we just click on one of those titles there, let's take a look at the Hallmark classic, Haul Out the Holly. And within the record here, we can see the kind of things that we're managing. So you have obviously at the header there, the main title, the core genres that are associated, and we've imported all of this from Nexus earlier on in another demo, and this is what we had by default. And you can see across the horizontal tabs here, this is the kind of data that you typically would manage within your business relating to your title metadata, including, for example, IDs that you may want to store to point out to other records. Descriptions of the synopses that we're actually auto-creating now in the Claude prompt for the new title that we're importing. And the kind of governance features that we think are incredibly important here is linkage to the security model. So not all of your users and not all of your teams should have access to all of this data all at once. So all of these tabs and all of these groups can be linked to the security model and the organizational structure that you have within your business so that only the right information is presented at the right time, at the right point in your governance workflow. Should we take a look at where Claude's got up to?
Sure thing. So we'll go back to our library. We should get our little refresh here.
Okay, great.
Marty Supreme.
Marty Supreme has arrived. So if we take a look at Marty Supreme, we've started it off with a rich set of metadata. It's a relatively new title, so we've probably got a really nice rich set of metadata here. Let's have a look at the identifiers quickly there, Rob, to check. So the identifiers is a really important deduplication feature that we support. So we will track each piece of content in the world is referred to by 1 million different identifiers across both public and private sources. In many of our deployments of Origin Studio, that's one of the key things that we're looked to do, is to actually deduplicate and reference all of these different IDs so that you can remove any confusion within your business in terms of these things. So you can see here we've got the IMDb ID, the TMDB, the Wikipedia, the IDA ID, increasingly used as a deduplication source in many workflows. If you have a Grace Note license, you can put TMS ID and so on. Now, in the descriptions panel here, we should have some synopses now. Fantastic. So these are not the synopses that came from Nexus, just to be really clear. The synopses that came from Nexus are actually stored elsewhere. And what you can see here is that we've come in with both an English and French set of synopses. And it is Claude, actually, who has looked at the source data per Rob's prompt testing. And per Rob's prompt has actually gone ahead and created and patched into the API via the MCP server these new synopses. And this kind of workflow typically today is quite labor intensive, quite laborious. And we've just done about 2 days of work in about 10 minutes. Okay. So a lot of the work that goes on today is quite laborious to get all of this into this format, to do all of the translations, to get it all up to speed. And increasingly, agentic installations like this agentic systems like this will be doing a lot of this work. And the role of the people in the flow will be increasingly to review and approve and to guide what's going on. Okay, so we've got our title in our catalog. We've moved on to the stage of our business where now we actually need to move physical assets around. What we're going to do now is talk to another one of our MCP servers in the Xytech world. So moving into Xytech now, we have, again, exposed the system capabilities to Claude, and we want to create a media order. And the media order is to actually do the ingest of the physical media, because now we want to distribute Marty Supreme into a certain territory. So within Xytech, we can actually go again into the user interface if we wish and do all of this manually by clicking in various areas, setting up the templates, setting up the tasks. But Claude can help us do this as well. So Rob's asked it to create a media ingest order for Bell Canada as the destination, starting the ingest tomorrow. Oh, and we may need to create the title record in Xytech as well, if it doesn't already exist. So we're going to do some thinking. Okay, interesting. So it couldn't find Bell Canada.
Did now.
So it's decided to go off and find other names for Bell Canada, and it's found Crave Bell Media as the customer. That's good. So it deduplicated our customer destination based on our vague prompt quite successfully. And now we're creating a media order and building the ingest. So the title has been created within the Xytech system so that references what we just did in Origin Studio. All done, Rob. Here's the summary of what's created. Great. So we've gone into our Xytech system. This is the new Xytech X2 user interface for anyone who knows Xytech and has used it in the past. This is our refreshed UI that we've launched here at the NAB show this time around as well. And you can see that we have a couple of media orders here. And right at the top, we have the new media order that we just created via Claude for Marty Supreme. So that's great. As it builds that out, and as we elaborate on the setup of this system, it could be that we had a default process that we wanted to invoke. And once we have the actual job set up underneath, we'll get the Gantt chart, which will show the different steps that will have to take place in order to get this order out to Crave's platform on time. And the Gantt chart will start to have color indications about whether we are at risk on some of our deliveries and our steps within that process.
And so that sort of end-to-end workflow process where you've gone out, you've done the research against the title, you've added that title in, you've actually created your media ingest, transformation rules, and delivery orders, has all been something that we've been able to automate through the use of these tools. I think the key thing to point out is we do have these three systems, right? You could have done the research You then could have gone and looked up your title and added it. And then you could have added your media order. And all of that has been compressed down to just a logical flow. I think one of the takeaways that we're really seeing is in this demo, we used, 10, 12 of the tools that are available in our MCPs. So it's more of like, we've got this tool set available to enable whether it's ad hoc, right? We're just doing this today, or if they're codified using N8N or other tool sets to actually gather this data and move it around. We can support almost any sort of media workflow that involves title master data, assets, ingest, QC. Any of that can be done through this MCP layer, which is a really exciting place to have landed.
And I think an interesting observation I'd have about this is that as the head of products, I spend a lot of time thinking about how much work we should put into user interfaces when conversational UIs apparently can do a lot of the work for us. The reality is that we're in the hard spot of having to balance both for the time being. So I think across our customer base, the user interface isn't going away. We're putting a lot of work into making sure that people like to be there and like to do their work on a day-to-day basis in the user interface. And then the conversational and agentic layer is really a force accelerator. It really enables your people to work faster and more efficiently. But I think they're always going to go back to the UI in order to actually double check things, make sure that the agentic workers have done their job properly. Because at the end of the day, a lot of what's happening here is still relatively early. We are very early in this journey of deploying agentic workers into our environments. And so the user interface isn't going anywhere soon in terms of ensuring that what work is taking place is the correct work and is validated. So I think we're going to be balancing both. I'm going to be making sure that we're delivering both to you and across the customer base for a while yet.
Great. So I'd like to turn it around and see if there's any questions from the audience.
And if there's no questions, you're welcome to come and have a play with me.
Exactly. Okay, here you go. Sir, Megan. How do you handle the authorization across your different systems using the MCP?
Sure. So the MCP endpoints, when you, let's say you want to connect, I'm a user and I want to connect Cowork to the MCP, we have a URL endpoint and OAuth set up in front of it. So if you have single sign or your identity provider, the way that you would log into Origin Studio or Xytech will be done in that same manner. So it checks with OAuth, gets the JWT token, inherits your security from that system, which is really important. So like if you're not allowed to edit records in Studio and you ask it to do it, the tool is not going to allow you to do it. So it's exactly mirrors the same access a user would have in any of these systems if they were to log in through the front door anyway. So we've taken that same auth layer and just pushed it to the agentic side.
I think it's an interesting thought as to what happens then if a purely agentic worker in the future, which isn't linked to a human user, is something that you want to deploy into your business. Then there's going to have to be some thinking around exactly how you organize that from a security tokens point of view and how you organize setting those agents up. But actually being deployed onto the AWS infrastructure gives us a lot of tooling and a lot of contextualized capability around that as well.
So in this workflow, I would say anyone who's doing acquisitions, so like you're acquiring content for your organization, but this is one of many workflows that can be enabled. So the others could be creating just example work orders where you're scheduling resources. You don't have to do the 2 steps in advance. You can say like, hey, I need what we've actually built into Xytech today is we've enabled our own AI, right? So using the same set of services to say, I need to schedule these 4 resources starting in 2 weeks for 3 hours a day using this camera, this studio, this. We'll go create that in Xytech.
Any other questions? Does anyone want to come and have a play? You're welcome to come and challenge Claude.
Absolutely. He's good at it too, I've heard. Yeah. Well, let's give a round of applause for Rob and Andy. I think they did a great job, very thorough.